Welcome everybody to Phyllis, the Schlafter Show, where each week we break down Mrs. America, Hulu's attempt at trying to normalize the horrifying woman known as Phyllis Schlafly. It's kind of great to be able to have a forum where we can talk about the Dolores Umbridge of feminism, and I am thrilled and delighted to have my co-host with me as always, Moji Oluwadell.
Hello.
Molly Gaby.
Hello.
And joining us is our very special guest this week, the Reverend Irene Monroe, who is a speaker, syndicated columnist, and theologian who writes extensively on LGBTQ issues and religious intolerance. Thank you, Reverend Irene.
I'm delighted to be here.
So, everybody, we have all been watching. We are into episodes 3 and 4. We are having a little cocktails. After the first episode last week, Molly was very successful at having a big giant glass of wine and said, "What are you all drinking?" So we decided to have a special cocktail that we are calling the Mintersectional Feminist. So go in hard. Basically what it is, it's a liquid beverage with mint in it. So we went wild on that. So
Goes down smooth.
I
used my hat, which was gum.
So episodes 3 and 4 deep dive into Shirley Chisholm and Betty Friedan. And in thinking about sort of the encompassing themes of both of these episodes, I think what we all came up with was basically what happens when your movements are not intersectional. And we see the crumbling of that in a big way. And I don't even know where to start. So I think I'm going to start by asking you, Reverend Monroe, as a Black lesbian feminist who grew up in Shirley Chisholm's district.
That's right.
I would love for you to talk a little bit about what those struggles were like, whether it was coming into Shirley's struggle with the intersections of her own Congressional Black Caucus, or with the white feminists who supported her, or to the Democratic Party writ large.
Okay. Well, growing up in the district at the time, she was a powerhouse. We called her Moses. We called her Harriet Tubman. And so let me just give you a little historical background. Just go back a couple of years before she was elected to office. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, signed by LBJ. So Shirley Chisholm, at that time, she was teaching, but she was dedicated and determined to exercise the right to vote. And one of the things she would say and go around the neighborhood, she asked us to sign the petition. She wanted to run for office. And in doing so, she got folks, I wasn't of age, but she got our parents and elders in the community to vote. This is important. The 1965 Voters' Rights Act, had been passed. We must exercise that right. The district that I was in is a forgotten area. Nobody really cared about it. I can go on. It was quite underserved, but I need to say this. So that's 65. 67 is the red hot summer, riots all over the place. Chicago, Detroit, New York, LA. But in 68, a lot happens in 68. MLK dies. We're beginning to see the Black Power movement. We're beginning to see the women's movement take place here. Also, we have Robert F. Kennedy, who dies later on that year. So it's a violent year. It's a struggling year here. And so what you're seeing now is various groups of people. And how do I forget this? That's right. The Vietnam War is going on. Duh, how do I forget that, right? The Vietnam War is going on. So you have all these varying groups of folks really just upset about the state of America and not knowing about how to, do intersectional kind of organization. So you have the Black Panthers here. You have also, I need to say this, unfortunately, King was losing favor because there was infight between a new bumper crop of young Black activists, like Bobby Seale and Stokely Carmichael, all saying, look, this passive, this civil disobedience is not working. We need to, pick up arms. And so here you have these various groups. And the Black Arts Movement was going on. A lot was happening. Black Arts Movement was happening. So Shirley Chisholm was really a unifier because one of the things she realized that all these folks were in her community. and that if we wanted the change that we are envisioning, we needed to vote, and we needed to put someone who can articulate that. So she also saw herself as, you know, the voice of the people, and indeed. But can I just say this about Shirley Chisholm, that I love the portrayal of her, and please tell me the name of the woman who portrays her. How do you pronounce it?
Aduba
Does a fantastic job capturing the fervor and intensity.
when we were talking earlier, I know Molly, you said that was one of the scenes that made your heart drop, and hearing your story when she's walking in with the Congressional Black Caucus and they're telling her their feelings was really something.
Yeah, that scene really hit home for me. What happens when your movement is not intersectional? You lose. Spoiler alert. So that scene specifically is when Shirley is walking into the Democratic National Convention with a delegate from the Congressional Black Caucus, and they're talking, and he's telling her that they're going to endorse McGovern. Now, he's from the caucus that she helped found a year before.
Some of the brothers question whether you're really the candidate for blacks or just for women.
I don't look black to you. Does this make me black?
This scene, I really think, is the beginning of her abandonment by people who really should be raising her up.
But then we see it followed by, right, the feminist organization that she also was a founding member of, essentially saying the same thing.
You ran a terrific campaign.
Well, I'm still running.
Primaries are over.
And then we end sort of part of the episode with Bella saying, your campaign's a joke. You accepted money from Black Panthers. And we know McGovern's going to give us what we want. And it's really also heartbreaking to see that, like, she's sort of not being held up by the Black men that she works with and also the women that she works with.
You know what? That era was a very interesting era because the rhetoric out on the street, and people would ask you, they would ask Black women this: what was a greater oppression, being a Black woman or being Black or being a woman? And so it's so interesting. And so it forced many people in the community to make decisions here. Am I more oppressed being Black than I am being a woman? And then the whole notion of this hierarchy of oppression, this notion that if you're gonna, that one oppression is greater than the other, got the kind of male dominant leadership and backstabbing that went on. I have to tell you about Bella. I loved Bella until actually the movie.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I had forgot, when you're young like that, you don't remember all of this. We love Bella. Many of us, up and coming feminists and stuff, because, I'm at that point, I'm about, 13, 14 years old. And we're loving Bella, and of course we're loving Shirley. That tension, I forgot about that tension because that tension caused a kind of Black-Jewish split. Mm-hmm. And what happened is that Bella was using Shirley, but she wouldn't have it, as the rabbit in a race, meaning we put you out front, but then we will come behind you, not supporting you, but we will then lay out the real agenda. Because a rabbit in a relay race sets the pace, throws the pace off in a race and acts as a deterrent. And they were using her as a rabbit in a relay race.
Thinking that white men are going to be the answer to prioritize the issues of people was astounding to me. The members of the Congressional Black Caucus knew that. Surely Bella knew that, being such a radical in Congress. She knew that she wasn't going to get anything passed, and yet they all convinced each other, and they all believed McGovern, and that comes to a full head when they were doing the abortion vote on the floor, right? When the promise was, okay, ladies, if you just don't talk about abortion, what we'll do is we'll quietly give you our chairs, and then you can vote for it into the platform. And that was the deal that they struck with Gloria. And then all of a sudden, you see that deal crumble, and you watch those men come back in for their seats.
I need to take my seat back.
No, stay down, don't get up.
They told us to take our votes back.
Who told you that? McGovern's people?
The word is out. It's vote no on abortion.
And we sit and watch as the women didn't even get to talk about abortion.
That's right.
And then they didn't even get to vote on it, and all of that. And Shirley just being on the stage and looking, and you could tell she was just like, why did you people listen to this?
Power concedes nothing. If we don't demand true equality, we are always going to be begging the men for a few crumbs from the pie, trading women for an empty promise.
And that scene was particularly heartbreaking because they didn't even get crumbs. They got nothing.
Yeah.
What's worse than not getting crumbs? They got raw dough. It was humiliating.
She wasn't going to buy out on anything. I got to show the book now so your audience see this. This is the original book. It was my Bible. As a 14-year-old, it was my Bible. You read it from cover to cover, and I kept it. It's obvious. 95 cents for a paperback here. If I open it too much now, the pages will fall out, so I won't. But what I wanted to say about the title of the book, and it gets back to Beller, one of the reasons for the title of the book is that unbought and unbossed, because she was considered bossy and you couldn't buy her out. And that's how you get the title of the book.
I love that too, that two negative terms from the giant corporate way we do politics now, like that you couldn't have somebody who is those two things. And also bossy, we're all bossy. We've decided that we have a stake in the game, and our voices matter, therefore you are the problem. And I think, the theme, I like the way too that they sort of started out the episode with the larger power structure that was disappointing to see, but we understand that, as you say, Moji, and as they say, power doesn't concede itself, right? But then watching it play out in these feminist circles where everybody was trying to get power, and for me, that was really striking in the Ms. Magazine conversation when they were pitching stories.
That was cringeworthy.
I would like to explore the idea of tokenism in the workplace. This phenomenon that happens where one minority is propped up to cover the experience of an entire population. Like the white population, we are diverse within ourselves.
What does that mean, diverse within ourselves?
There is not a monolithic Black experience.
Wait, sorry, you're not saying you feel that way here. Look at our latest issue.
No, not at all.
Literally every white woman there looks everywhere but at her and quickly changes the subject, except for Gloria, who...
If you ever feel that way, you should say something. There's no hierarchy here.
Right.
Yeah, I just did, bitch. You're not hearing me? Yeah, Gloria could have done a little bit more than just like, are you okay? But
I have to say that that is so passive aggressively. I've had that experience, and it's like a woman boss is like, are you gonna be if it's a problem, let me know, and then I get fired? Like what? Like no, that is not how that works. And it just felt like, and I like that scene led into, so we see this scene and we watch these white feminists being so tone deaf about what was happening in the room and just the total dismissal of something that is crucial to having a movement work, and then going right to the party at Flo Kennedy's house and then watching a next layer of othering happening within Black feminism.
And Margaret was, of course, a triple threat, emphasis on the threat, a Black gay woman. People were scared that somehow her being around would dissolve their rights that they had. So I love that scene, the way that they showed us that.
I don't have a problem with Margaret and her kind, but their kind of talk puts gender before race.
Wait a minute. Margaret's kind?
If we include lesbians, we're not going to get support from the Black Power movement.
And what's so interesting, Huey Newton, one of the founders of the Black Panther movement, wrote a statement saying the importance of integrating our struggle with women, and at the time they used to say homosexuals. So it's very, very interesting, because then you get someone like Eldridge Cleaver, who writes Soul on Ice, very homophobic, even boast about raping white women. And that kind of toxic vitriol very much shaped a kind of militant, hyper masculinity among folks who were in the Black Power movement.
I want to transition into Betty Friedan because she had her own set of homophobia. And when it came to talking about lesbians in feminism, Betty Friedan cut the most gigantic Grand Canyon-sized rift into the movement with referring to lesbians as the Lavender Menace.
That's right. And that was at the 1969 National Organization of Women's conference there. And and she just felt like, given what her agenda was about, that, lesbians were a serious threat. And she used every stereotype you can use about lesbians. We're mannish. We don't like men. We don't use lipstick, all this sort of stuff. And the interesting thing is though, what I like is that you take a negative term and you make it positive, because Rita Mae Brown and others took that term and started a radical lesbian organization, which was just wonderful.
It was so good. And I feel too like in watching how that happened, Betty Friedan is so complicated, and talking about a complicated figure who was clearly groundbreaking, clearly a mess, and how do we, it's hard to honor her. You have to honor her, but also call out her flaws for it. We were talking about her portrayal in this, and I find that they portrayed her as awful. Like, I didn't like her at all. I felt like she felt petty. I felt like she didn't know how to really articulate where she needed the movement to go, or where she needed to get the respect that she deserved. And they just portrayed her as somebody who was petty. And I didn't think that her arguments with Phyllis were very good. I felt like it fell apart for me with Betty. And I felt really sad about that, because she's an icon. She started NOW, she started NARAL, she was a founding member of the Women's Caucus. And I was just like, wow, you're kind of a bitch all the time.
Yeah, no, that was really I don't know. I thought that was really unfair. I mean, she is definitely a flawed character, and her stance on lesbianism is terrifying. And this is Betty's titular episode, and they just made her the worst. She was drinking a lot. She was a terrible conversationalist. Her date scene, I don't know. It was a horrifying date to watch. And I also, even her first scene, right? She's walking across the street. She's clearly trying to bask in the glow of like Roe v. Wade, and somehow is upstaged by a photograph of Gloria Steinem.
That wasn't her fault. Okay, I'm sorry. I have to jump in here. Hot take. I thought she was incredible. I mean, I was dying laughing. I wish she was like next to me. I'd be like, Betty, this is hilarious. I thought she was totally sympathetic. I thought she was great. Yes, okay, because can you not sort of empathize with someone who's, where you're just a person, and then there's like a really hot picture of a photo of a lady behind you, and some person's like, hey, you're smoking, and then you turn around and it's not, you think it's you and it's not you. I just like, Betty's the every woman, you know what I mean?
Well,
it's go in and say Betty's the every middle class white woman.
Yeah. It's interesting. What was so sad here? So, I read the book. Could I relate to it? No. You're talking about a Black kid that growing up in Brooklyn in the projects. No, it's not relatable. But what I thought she did that was good, she articulated a problem that resonated, but it was too narrowly defined and depicted. But I look at it now, many years back, she was talking about her particular community and was resistant to understand that was a springboard to bring on more women. And her tenacity and her stubbornness around it was just unnecessary for her to then throw aspersions like the lesbian menace. Then her elitism came. So I thought she cheapened a wonderful premise that had a wonderful kind of elasticity, to grow. I thought she had really planted the seed. And so I just felt that she killed her own plant.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I felt. I felt like she started something beautiful, and it was based on her experience. But I think a lot of us have to start at our experiences, right? Like, I wouldn't expect Betty Friedan to know the experience of a Black woman in general, right? But I feel like when her book took off and other people embraced it, rather than sort of saying, yep, everyone gets it, let's like pull everyone into this big tent, she was like, no, this is a tent, it's fine, if it's me and everyone who looks like me, and we're good.
Yeah, and I think what she see, the disconnect was this for her upper crust white women on the east side of Manhattan, is that while we're talking about women, you're ignoring this Black woman who is taking care of your child or cleaning your house.
We haven't even talked about Phyllis yet because it's been such a rich thing. That with Phyllis, right? When they're debating in Illinois, right? And they're debating in Illinois, and you see Phyllis Schlafly, who looks like every safe white mom who bakes cookies, saying the most vitriolic bullshit that is just like rooted, convincing people that oppression is the way to go. It is the Sealy Posturepedic place you want to be in your life. And then Betty reacting accordingly with the amount of anger that you should, how it was perceived as even worse because Phyllis said it with a smile.
Yeah. That was her whole argument though, right? It's that feminists or, the liberals are miserable lesbians. So if you go to their side, you're going to be unhappy. So she had there were such huge stakes for Phyllis in maintaining this psychotic smile. That's why she was so effective in the debate, because as long as she kept it together, it did not matter what crazy shit she said. And it was all crazy. As long as she, has this veneer, she wins.
I think Kate Blanchett does a wonderful job portraying Phyllis. Because we know the backstory about Kate Blanchett being such a great feminist. So it's interesting to see someone like Tracey Ullman, as well as, Kate Blanchett play these awful characters. But, the very thing about Phyllis Schlafly that I thought was very, very interesting here is that she is so polished that she can fool you in terms of, she reminds me of, we got to understand that white supremacy is an ideology. So too is misogyny. And it is best acted out for the very people you're targeting. For example, when we talk about white supremacy, I always tell people there are Black white supremacists. Clarence Thomas and what is his name? He used to be a surgeon here. Ben Carson are Black white supremacists because they can act, they have such power that they can change policy and legislation. And Phyllis is such a misogynist and sexist because she has that kind of power. It's one thing to spew it, but it's another thing that you can change the course of the way people are to behave in society. It's astounding.
Well, and I feel like too, when we talk about intersectionality, she was very good at being intersectional with misogyny and racism and homophobia. Like, she was really good. She worked those intersections like a boss. She was super good at it. But I think watching that, and she worked really, really hard to make sure that all of the people that are our oppressors would feel comfortable with her power, that she came to her own power to make sure that the established white supremacy, misogyny, and all of that was going to stand. And so they gave her a platform with which to do it. And I find that so interesting.
Yeah, and we see that so clearly in that scene at the hotel with Phyllis is there for the national gathering of the Karens, and they're all there. And there's the table of the Southern delegates for the Stop ERA, which, by the way, in an earlier scene, they had decided the acronym for STOP, what that would mean for them. And what they came up with, literally, you wouldn't believe it if this wasn't true. Stop taking our privileges.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the quiet part, ladies. That's no, they wear it, emblazoned on their chests. So they're there, and we're seeing them. I won't repeat what these people said. We'll show you the scene.
The Lord made men and women different, just like he did white people and the coloreds. Yes. Do we want the sexes fully integrated like the races? We must not let the same thing happen with uppity liberals as happened with those uppity Negroes.
Her base is white supremacists, right? Like they have a real unified, it's easy to unify a bunch of white people under white supremacy and privilege, right? They didn't have all the fracturing that the feminists did. So I found that scene to be so clearly illustrative of Phyllis's effectiveness at just sort of sweeping it under the rug, while it was really like the motor of her movement, this white supremacy.
And this is one of the ways that I feel like the show is actually particularly kind to Phyllis, because at no point so far have they actually called her out as a white supremacist. It's obviously inferred, but they don't say it. It's a lot of her like handing overt white supremacy off with kid gloves. But it's like everything she's standing for is benefiting and in service of white supremacy. But they seem to be working to keep the stink of it off of her directly.
You're not suggesting that I'm prejudiced.
No, of course not. No one thinks that. The libbers lie all the time. If people only knew how close you are with Willie. You taught her daughter how to read.
Wow.
That's so, it's so, like, it's, what are you talking about? Like,
racism is giving your housekeeper food that you won't feed your family.
Right. So she would be called a soft racist. She's a soft racist. I mean, she's polished. She certainly is not going, like you said, use the N-word. But she also, I mean, she's very interesting in this way. Of course she wouldn't go to a Klan meeting. Of course she wouldn't say we don't want Black women or any other, it's the way in which she has someone to do her dirty work. She's above the fray here. And so I just feel like, yeah, she rolls like I'm a soft racist by her complicity and by what she doesn't say and trying to bring everybody together for her own particular agenda. And she'll do it by any means necessary. But the point is, baseline, she is a racist.
She couldn't go to a Klan meeting because it would ruin her hair. The hood would just take away from that hairdo. And she's like, I'd like to join your club, but oh, my hair. I'm with you. I'm with you. Not at all. And I think that we've covered a ton of ground, but I don't want to leave without talking about the sort of introduction of, we meet her son. And anybody who knows about Phyllis Schlafly's son knows that she has a gay son. They haven't said that she has a gay son in the series, but like all of us know that she has a gay son. And there's literally a scene where, and if you know that she has a gay son, you watch that relationship with a different lens. But when she asks him, where have you been going?
Well, then where are you going?
Church, okay. Tommy asked me to play at his wedding. I've been practicing on the church's organ at night when no one's there.
I've been practicing on the church's organ at night when no one's there. And I'm just like, oh my God, that metaphor is too much.
Cheers to the writers on that one. Yeah. Woo! I'm going to use that.
You know what I love about it? Because I deal with this all the time. People who are virulently homophobic and one of their children, come out gay. And then they'll come back to me and say, I don't know what happened. And I get snarky and I say, that's God writing straight with crooked lines. I love it.
But the scene is so weird because they show him playing the organ like he's some closeted Quasimodo, and he's like staring at it and leering, and it's and then staring at the groom. And I'm thinking it's a foreshadow of either just repressive behavior, because I honestly don't know how that relationship plays out in real life, and I'm sure it's going to play out in the series. And to what degree that we see that is going to be really telling. So next week we will not be on. We're going to take a hiatus, and we're going to cover those 2 weeks the following week. And we're taking the hiatus because we are working with the Abortion Care Network and Shout Your Abortion to produce an incredible 10-hour telethon to raise money for independent abortion providers who have been absolutely decimated by not only COVID, but also because of the governors who are trying to restrict reproductive access in states and using a pandemic as a cudgel. So we're going to do a 12-hour fundraiser on our sister organization's Instagram page, which is Abortion Front on Instagram, and we have all kinds of celebrities. We have Elizabeth Banks, and we have Leah Delaria, Sandra Bernhard, Margaret Cho, a whole cavalcade of people who are going to be coming on Instagram all day, entertaining you, giving auction items, reading poems, all in the name of raising money for abortion funds. So that will be next week. So we will be on again the week after that, but you'll see the promos. Reverend Irene, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights.
Listen, a tsunami of thanks for having me. This was just a dream come true. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And thank all of you for watching. Moji? Molly?
I want to remind everyone to send us your cocktail recipes.
Yeah, we'll make some cocktails, but have yourself a fantastic intersectional feminist on us. And Molly did a good job of finishing hers, which terrifies me. Bye for now. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Abortion Access Front, fueled by cheap wine and the stench of patriarchy.